Alrighty. Welcome everyone to the Transgender Show. I'm your host, Emily. Thank you so much for coming tonight. My guest tonight is Lacy Artmis. Lacy is she calls herself a creative Swiss Army knife, currently residing in Toronto, Canada. She's a talk show host, a Twitch streamer, a published author, graphic designer. We love our graphic designers here, of course, musician, and so much more. Lacy is also neurodivergent and LGBTQ+, which is why she's here. You can find her on most social media platforms under Artemis Creates, sometimes with the underscore. We'll get it in the chat in a minute, or if one of my mods would love to go ahead and do that, find her Instagram. It's here under her name, but if we could get a link in chat, that'd be awesome because I didn't get that set up. Without further ado, please everyone welcome to the show, Lacy. Hi, hon.
Hello. So nice to be here.
It's so wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for agreeing to do the show. I really appreciate it. So let's get started. Let's start off with a really simple one. How do you identify?
I identify as trans feminine. I don't identify as a binary trans woman, but nothing against that. It's just for me, I realize that trans feminine is the label with all considered that feels like the best fit for me, and non-binary, I guess, as well.
Okay, so I like to start at the beginning now, also early on in the show, with one of my favorite questions. How did you choose your name?
So yeah, this comes up on Twitter semi regularly, and basically when I was trying to pick my name, a lot of the very common popular names like Katie and Sarah and Emily and Sophie and Ashley, like those very like kind of feminine girly names, like a lot of them appealed to me, but I either already knew a lot of people with that name or I had family members with that name, and so I and I also wanted something a little bit less common.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, like I actually really do love lace, like the actual like fabric or texture or whatever it be considered. I've always loved it, and the name Lacy, it looks great in cursive, and that's another thing I love. So
Oh, nice.
yeah, it stuck. It worked.
That's the true sign of a good graphic designer, is that you're thinking of your name in terms of how it will look in different forms and different fonts and things like that. I love that.
Yeah.
So moving on, when did you realize you were different, and what were the early clues for you?
So, yeah, I was trying to think of if I want to order this like chronologically or it was roughly 4 years ago or 4.5 years ago when I officially started identifying as non-binary, and about 6 months after that, I kind of cracked my egg completely. But the signs were kind of there probably from as early as I can sort of remember being a young kid, and
Hmm.
just never feeling like masculinity, especially like macho masculinity, it never appealed to me. It never felt like that was just not, I don't want to be that. I don't really want anything to do with that. And
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the weird part, because a lot of people, a lot of trans people, it's like, no, that's not me. This is me. I'm supposed to be this instead. And for me, it was just that part wasn't there for some reason. I don't know why exactly. It was just,
Okay.
well, no, this isn't me, but that's kind of, and it was just like, okay, but I didn't at that time. I didn't feel like, no, I'm supposed to be a girl instead. But kind of looking back, there were other signs like I always preferred the company of girls, and I tried to live vicariously through girls in my life a lot, and women in my life, and kind of once I was in my kind of mid to late 20s, I started to like notice like women's fashion, women's clothing and styles and colors, and it just it spoke to me. It caught my attention, and I just started to look like, if to use a Simpsons reference, there's that episode where they have these like really boring uniforms at school, and everyone just kind of becomes like a zombie, and then they get rained on, and then they turn into Technicolor, and everyone just kind of like wakes up. And that's kind of how it felt to me when I started noticing girls' clothes, and I looked at guys' clothes, just like, this is so boring and uninspired. It's lifeless. And no offense to any masculine or male identifying people that are watching, just that's just how it was for me. And once for me, the moment was going to a thrift store and trying on a dress for the first time, and it clicked.
Hmm. And what brought that on? How did you get to the point of trying a dress on in the shop?
Yeah, so there was a private event being organized by a friend of mine that was basically for all like queer, trans, non-binary, and like agender people, and it was being held at a private space. So you could come and you could, dress however you wanted. You could even, if you were kind of gender fluid, you could kind of change throughout the event, that sort of thing. And I knew that I wanted to go and use that opportunity to try, being a woman, and
Huh,
so I needed to get some attire for that, and that's why I needed to go and get a dress.
very cool. Yeah, I love that was sort of your first attempt and first expression was just going straight for the dress. That's awesome. When you first realized that you were trans, did that cause any issues for you? Did that bring up any kind of fears or anything? I mean, under the trans umbrella.
I mean, I suppose, like, obviously before I came out, I was, the usual concerns, like, I'm not sure how my family's gonna take this. I'm not sure how it's gonna go over at work, and Um, but I wasn't so much nervous about it socially because I had before I like part of me coming to identify as non-binary was like meeting lots of other non-binary, queer, trans people and just opening up my mind to those possibilities more. And instead of it just being, well, that's just how some people are, it's like, well, that could maybe be me. And do I want that to be me? And I was very fortunate because one of my boss's best, like, close personal friends was a trans woman that she'd known for years already,
Hmm.
and my family was pretty good. I mean, certainly, I know that it ends up pretty badly for a lot of people,
Yeah.
and what I did notice, and it kind of makes sense, is that the younger people in my family, like my sister and my cousins, were a lot more able to roll with it, and like my parents and my aunts and uncles were um they try to be supportive, but they were also kind of just like, I don't really know what to do with this.
Hmm. Because you were at that point you were defining yourself as non-binary.
I didn't come out to my family that way. It was because I was still kind of figuring things out, but then once
Okay.
I realized, like, no, I need to like live as a like a girl, a feminine person, then it was like, okay, well, this is obviously going to be a total change from what everyone's used to. So I had to come out with it.
Hmm. And then, so you kind of alluded to that your story coming out was actually, it sounds like it was pretty easy, right?
From the kind of stories and the what I've heard from other trans people, I do. It seems like I was in the very like probably the luckier minority, kind of all considered. Yeah.
Hmm. Who did you come out to first? And what was that? What prompted that choice?
I think the first people that I kind of came out to, I mean, it's been 4 years now, and my long-term memory kind of sucks, but I think it was just when I was first starting to like look for places that I could be the new me kind of thing. So like events for new or questioning youth, or like actually one of the first groups I went to was I think it was called Autistic Queers. So it was a
Huh.
group for autistic people who were also gender nonconforming in some fashion,
Hmm.
and I made a couple of friends from that were really helpful for me in kind of my first year or so.
Hmm.
And then for my friends that I already knew, it was kind of a slow, careful process of kind of first coming out to like, maybe about a half dozen really close personal friends
Yeah.
who I was very confident would be cool with it. And then
Hmm.
there's sort of like tiers of like, okay, the next tier of people that I think are probably going to be cool with it, but and then sort of further and further. And then once I had, kind of gained enough confidence from coming out to these several like layers and waves, then it's like, okay, now it's just I'm going all out now.
Hmm. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, and I've never thought of this before, but yeah, that's sort of how you do it. You start with the core, and then you go out, very much like planning a wedding. They're like the family people that you have to invite, and then there's like, oh, if we invite them, we have to invite these people, and then like it changed into a whole bunch of people. But that's kind of awesome. I love that. I love that I finally kind of saw that tie in a funny way. Um, who was the hardest person for you to come out to?
I guess, like, looking back at it now again, because my memory is really kind of hazy about it now. So the sort of most obvious answer that comes to mind for me is my father. And that's not something I want to get too deep into, but
Hmm.
that was I mean, not that he wasn't supportive in some ways, but it still wasn't quite what I had hoped. And yeah, I guess that's about what I'll say about that right now.
Okay. And then did you have anybody, I love asking this question because I had some really kind of interesting people that I wasn't expecting to accept me, at least not to the level that they did. Did you have anybody like that that surprised you that to the level they accepted you or the fact that they accepted you at all?
Honestly, I was kinda surprised by my sister, and in looking back at it, it was kinda silly,
Hmm.
because like, my sister, uh, she's a little bit more old-fashioned compared to me, but, she's also shown me that, like, the way that she has, raised her kids, that she's been extremely supportive and open-minded. And, she even kinda said, I think at one point, that, she appreciated that, like, as an opportunity to, help encourage her kids to be more, like, open to different things. And
Wow.
yeah, and just my relationship with my sister has been kind of, it used to be more sort of, I don't know how to say it exactly, like, not bad, but, like, it was we've bonded over certain things, but we're not exactly, like, super close. And
Hmm.
so it just, yeah, I wasn't quite expecting her to be as supportive as she was, but I certainly appreciated it.
So then when, so you mentioned and I forget I forget what you called the organization that you joined in with that where you found autistic people that were
Mhm.
trans. Um, was that your first community, and that community stick? Were you able to find a lot of friends from that?
Yeah, I've actually still got several friends that I met through that kind of, autistic plus trans or autistic plus queer, sort of network and circle.
Hmm.
Um, I do remember that there was one specific Facebook group that was just for, like, trans women who identified as generally more feminine. And that I was very, like, in sort of the first, I guess, year or so, I was very active on there, very, like, deep, and trying to just connect with anyone on there who would connect with me. And
Hmm.
just to kind of find that, like, that kind of acceptance and support and community and the memes, and people answering questions. And eventually I kind of reached a point where I felt more sort of, I guess, secure in kind of the state of things, and didn't feel like I needed as much support. So I still had friends, but yeah, I kind of, after about a year and a half, or maybe 2 years, I think I kind of graduated more just to, like, living my life and just having the friends I had and meeting new people along the way. But I don't spend a ton of time in kind of support groups anymore.
Hmm. When you were going through that and you were, building up your network and finding community, did you have a particular person that you looked up to or a particular confidant that you could um, bounce questions off of?
This is one of the ones that I think I put an extra note down about. I'm just trying to find it.
Hmm.
Uh, um, that was not the one. So what was the question again? Sorry.
Did you have a particular role model or confidant, somebody you could confide in that had experience with this, or like I said, a particular role model? A lot of people look up to Suddenly Samantha, maybe like a Casey Blake, Megan Bound, the Transvengers.
Yeah, when I was first starting to transition, I know that like, Steph Senyati was a prominent YouTuber. I know she doesn't do YouTube anymore.
Mm, okay.
There was also, I used to watch ContraPoints a while ago, and I kind of fell out of her stuff, kind of partly due to the controversy, and partly because it's just hard to sit through really long videos.
Mm-hmm.
I did think some of her kind of earlier content was really solid. And yeah, the two people that I kind of met at that first Autistic Queers meeting, I'm still sort of loosely in touch with one of them, but they were both really helpful. And one of them actually helped connect me to the trans therapist that I eventually saw to kind of help facilitate me through the first kind of year and a bit.
Okay. And that was, yeah, that dovetails nicely into the next question, which was like basically how did therapy play a part in your transition? Did you have somebody for that kind of side of things throughout all of it?
Yeah, I actually ended up with a trans man as a therapist, but he was really great
Hmm.
um,
Wow.
and and very like sensitive, and I certainly appreciated that. And again, I wish that my memory was better at this point because I know that's like probably like three years ago now or something. And but I mean, it definitely helped. Like kind of everything in confluence helped me kind of reach a point where I felt like I was more able to continue sort of walking forward, not entirely on my own, but more independently.
Hmm. Yeah. So as you got into that, what did you kind of discover, or what were the innate things that you ran into that were your key fears in transitioning?
I think a lot of it was trying to like understand kind of the options with the different surgeries or the name change stuff, like because a lot of that was not well explained. Like you kind of have to go into the communities or the forums to kind of get information. And then like some places would have like policies about like you can't make recommendations or you can't tell people to do a certain thing.
Hmm. Yeah.
um, and I mean, yeah, I think that's obviously a big kind of stumbling block for a lot of trans people is trying to figure out the surgery stuff and what surgeries like do you want and can you afford them or where are you going to get them or are you going to have support to kind of recover and things like that. And the name change again for me it went very smoothly. And yeah, I think that again, I'm regretting that my memory is not a little bit more firm at this point.
Mhm.
Hopefully that answers the question,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah. That's totally good. Um, yeah. I just found out today. I've had the paperwork on my desk for a while, but I just was actually finally going through it and found out that my name change is going to be almost $1,000.
Mm, that's
I guess it's
is
just
that specific to your state or?
I guess so, yeah. So apparently the court fees themselves are like 435, something like that. And then you have to publish 4 consecutive weeks in a newspaper, one day, 4 consecutive weeks, and the newspaper apparently charges like $350 for that.
Hmm.
And then I was trying to make it super easy and simple and the whole thing, and went through LegalZoom, and they gathered all the paperwork, which was great, but that was like $120. I thought that was, just gonna make it easy and whatever. I didn't realize that there were all these other charges on top of it too.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, I think here
yeah,
in Canada, I mean, I'm in Ontario and I can only speak for Ontario,
hmm
but I think it was something like maybe like $150 or something like that. That's what my memory is saying, but I don't know if that's correct anymore. But yeah, it wasn't $1,000, man. That's that's basically like I mean, I think I paid like $2,000 for like a year of laser hair removal, so that's expensive.
yeah, yeah. I think that would pretty much finish my laser hair removal. You know, 'cause I'm getting pretty close to the end on the beard here. I had one about a month ago, and
Mm,
looks like I'm doing pretty well here. So it's just like, yeah, I
yeah.
think another few $100s, I'd be good. So I could probably even I could use that money to get done with laser and even probably put the rest towards FFS or something. But
Yeah, I actually still need to get a little bit of electrolysis because, in case any of the viewers don't know, laser hair removal doesn't actually get rid of 100% of the hair. Some of
Hmm.
it is still kind of left. It's just basically like little baby white hairs,
Yeah.
and like you can't really see them, but like I can still feel them, and they bother me, like because I have sensory issues. So I still do kind of shave every few days, even though no one can really tell. But I want to eventually get them taken care of. So.
Well, yeah, it's just a matter of, like right now I'm in that weird period where I'm old, so I have a lot of the white hairs coming in, and but I still have the black ones, so I have to do foundation to cover it. And then if you've
Mm,
got hairs coming through like the white ones, then you end up with kind of a bumpy complexion. It looks terrible. So not
mm.
fun. Um, have your transition goals shifted as you've gone through? It sounds like they kind of have. It sounds like what how you identified changed. Were there any things that you saw from the beginning that you thought you would do that you've kind of changed your mind on, or the opposite, where you didn't think you would kind of go through certain steps and now you're looking forward to those?
Um, I guess certainly kind of on the like the surgeries front of things. I have like as you mentioned, I also would like to get some facial feminization surgery, but that would have to be completely out of pocket. And I had a hair transplant, and that alone was like took me like 2 years to pay off.
Wow.
And I don't really want to go through that again. But at the same time, like I know this is one of the later questions, but like my brow bone is definitely like my most thing that causes me the most dysphoria. So it's something I think about, but I'm like, I've kind of accepted it may never happen, and I'm kind of at peace with that, and kind of a similar thing for, the big surgery that takes the longest to recover from. Like, it's kind of a like, it'd be nice, but the recovery aspect has kind of scared me off because like here in Ontario, that can be covered under health insurance, so I wouldn't have to pay for that out of pocket, but I would have costs incurred from, the recovery and everything.
Yeah. There have been some answers in the chat, but I thought it would be interesting to bring up. Is it better to say "yay, hurrah" when someone comes out, um, or is something more akin to "thank you for telling me, nice to meet you, Lacey" better? Should we make their coming out into terms with themselves a big deal, or is it counterproductive? What are your thoughts on that?
I think for me, it would depend on the person and kind of their disposition or their sort of vibe. Like certain people, if when they come out, I would kind of expect them to be a bit more exuberant, and so I'd be like, "Oh yeah, awesome, woohoo,
Hmm.
congrats!" And for other people, maybe it seemed more obvious, like it was a more deeply considered, I don't know what the right I can't find the right words, but when it just if it had a bit of a more like not somber vibe, but a more just cathartic vibe, maybe
Yeah.
it would be maybe more just like thanks for telling me. It's really cool, and here for you kind of thing.
Hmm. Yeah, I really agree with that, and that came up in the chat too. Is just that that thank you for telling me, thank you for having the courage, or for having the faith in me to feel that you were comfortable enough to tell me. I appreciate it, kind of a thing. What are some of the key aspects of your life and your presentation that make you feel the most valid?
Well, I can definitely say that my hair is sort of the thing that gives me the most euphoria.
That's a big help,
It,
right? So
I,
big.
I So I actually started growing my hair out, I think in grade 11, and I grew and I had like basically like metalhead hair. And I had that for about I think 10 or 12 years, and I was kind of going through this phase where like I sort of blamed a lot of things on the wrong stuff, and I kind of felt like, I'm just was having trouble with like dating and just and kind of got occasional comments about just it didn't look good, and you look like a girl and stuff like that, and I kind of it got to a point where I just like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna go clean cut and short hair and see if it makes a difference and kind of try it. And literally within like 6 months, I was like, that was a huge mistake. But
Hmm.
I was in a job at the time where I couldn't have it back. So I kind of had to just kind of live with it for a little while. And then in my current job, which I started it there's basically no like client facing aspect of it, so it wasn't an issue, and so I was able to start. So it's literally taken me 4 years to get it back to this point, and I just like it's such the point. I'm so like attached to my hair that like even hearing of other people cutting theirs like makes me just like, don't stay away from me.
Hmm.
And yeah, and I guess like I will admit, and I don't post a ton of selfies online for various reasons, but not having any like I don't wear much makeup, but like not having any on definitely makes me feel like I look in the mirror makeupless, and it's hard for me to see Lacey a lot of the time still.
Hmm.
Every once in a while I kind of get lucky and I catch the right angle, but yeah, I feel like I might be diverting away from the original question now.
No, and that's funny. It was a weird thing for me to kind of grasp and adjust to, is those um, both sides of that coin, where fully done up and in a dress and everything, and it's basically just as pretty as I can make myself, and I would just see a dude in the mirror. It was just such a bummer, just so dysphoric and deflating. And then other
Yeah,
times, even sort of unshaven, I could walk past the mirror and I'd be like, "Oh, there she is," and it would just be at weird random times, and I could never figure out what it was. I know that hormones help with that, and I wasn't on hormones at the time, but there were just you know those days where you were just really settled into yourself and you really felt like you, and then you saw it in the mirror. It's so wonderful to have that.
yeah,
So.
it's a good point with the hormones because I was just gonna say that was another really big one. I think it took like at least a year and a half before my face was like noticeably different to me, and kind of even without makeup, it's like, okay, at least that face is more feminine than it used to be.
Hmm.
And I know that a lot of trans people, when they start hormones, it's there's this great impatience of like, okay, how quickly am I going to see these changes, and just being dying for them because they can be so validating. And I have a design in my merch store, which is it's a play on the name estradiol valerate, and I made a design that has the estrogen molecule and it says validate, so it's like estradiol validates or estrogen validates, and it's a very like trans femme centric idea, but
Hmm.
I kind of thought it was kind of cute, so I made a design out of it, and it is kind of how I feel. It's like estrogen is magic in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's just kind of funny how it does do those great things that you kind of weren't expecting. Because again, we've been fighting against this for so long, trying to fit into the masculine ideal and all of that, and it just never felt right. And we just, for myself, I just felt less than always, and was, like, why don't I understand life so well? And then um, you start on hormones and living as your true self, and it's just like, oh, okay, I get it now. Yep, yep. That's why it didn't make sense, because it wasn't right. It didn't make any sense on any level, much less the parts that I was struggling with. So
Mhm.
these days, what we could sort of talked a little bit about it, but what are the key things that cause you dysphoria?
Yeah, like I said, definitely my brow bone. I I feel like people have told me that it's not as bad as I think it is, but I know obviously we always are more of our like our harshest critic. I I do kind of have like, I mean, I'm tall and skinny, so that does kind of work in my favor in terms of being like more conventional feminine beauty, but
Mm-hmm.
my structure and my proportions are like I can wear certain things to kind of cheat it, but if I'm like, even to this day, if I'm wearing like a loose top, even if there's like a bra underneath, I still am always like, like I look flat, and and still having a little bit of a bulge, and like I'm not as bothered by that anymore, but it's just sometimes just being aware of things that don't bother me as much, but I know that other people notice and
Yeah.
will will not have the reaction that I would like, or would not just not care like they should.
Mm-hmm.
And like, voice, my voice, depending on the day, sometimes it's more kind of where I want it to be, and other times it's not. And um, it's another thing that like, when I do my show, the show must go on. So even if I don't like my voice, I just
Mm-hmm.
have to do it anyways. And after many years of I've kind of gotten used to it more so, and yeah, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's two things, and we did talk about this a little bit in the pre-interview about how, when you go back and you listen to old tape or whatever, you realize that your voice, even when you feel like it's deep, isn't as deep as it used to be. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, it's hard. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of practice, and I generally find that as the interviews go on, as we talk more and more, my voice gets tired, my throat gets tired, so it drops down, and then I just kind of like lose that focus, and then as soon as we bring it up, then it's just like right back up there.
Yeah, it's kind of an advantage of sorts on my show because I'm the interviewer, so I can mostly let the guests just talk, and I don't have to talk as much. But yeah, that's not always the case.
Apparently, I haven't really learned that trick. I talk, I feel like a lot. uh,
I learned the hard way through just having to do so much extra editing.
yeah, yeah. So through your transition, what are the things that you feel have been the biggest hurdles for you? Or, if you didn't have like hurdles and blocks, were there learning curves, things that you had to kind of learn and get used to that you weren't expecting?
I'd say one thing, and this is something I've kind of heard as kind of common, is like just suddenly, like, obviously, like, well, I shouldn't say obviously, we don't necessarily just have to be like, oh, I have to buy tampons now, like you potentially do if you get bottom surgery. But it's like, just getting bras and like not knowing, because just there's things that girls learn when they're growing up that we don't get, and so we kind of have to like figure that. And it feels silly if you're like, in your 30s or 40s and you're like just asking things that like a teenage girl knows.
Yes.
And just feeling kind of silly, but also recognizing like, no, it's not. Why would I know this? I shouldn't be expected to know this, unless maybe you were much more like grew up more progressively and you talked to your female friends or your female siblings and kind of learned some of that stuff peripherally. And I guess another thing is like I just started using a period tracker app kind of sometime last year, and because I don't bleed, that's kind of the most obvious easy way to kind of know what's going on. Otherwise you kind of almost have to like guess a little bit.
Mm.
So but
With
then that's just kind of been interesting too.
Because you're still feeling emotional changes and stuff like that during that period.
Well, it's just trying to figure out like because there's no blood, so it's like there is a point where obviously I'm on my period, but there's not that super obvious signifier, so I have to figure out how else can I tell. And basically all I've been able to determine is like usually for about 3 or 4 days I'm normally very emotional already, but when I'm that kind of small little window, it's just like I am so overly emotional, it's ridiculous.
Mm. Yeah, I still gotta
Um,
keep my eyes open for that. I don't know that my hormone levels have balanced out enough or correctly to that point. I still need to get another blood test, but it's an interesting thing that I have to look forward to.
yeah, and I actually another one that just sort of occurred to me, like because I've done both pill, like sublingual pill estrogen, and
Mhm.
I've done like injections, and kind of like there's some logistics to figure out there, like how do you know the right place to put it, and do you do it like butt or thigh, and like, and then there's this thing I learned of literally just like for the first time last year called boofing, and I don't know where that term came from, but it's apparently very common. And so I'd be like, okay, what is that? And then, okay, do I want to try that? And then, okay, does it seem like it's making a difference or not? And just, again, lots of stuff that you just have to suddenly be like, okay, I have to figure this out and start doing this. And just kind of out of nowhere, sort of.
So is there a suppository version of estradiol, or are you just taking the regular pills
Oh
and
no, that was for progesterone.
for progesterone? Okay.
But you can also take that orally. It's just apparently not as effective, but it still works for me.
Okay. Um, we had you hit on something there with the injections that triggered some thoughts of what we talked about yesterday about the fears. And I know we
Mhm.
kind of didn't cover this so much today, but I really loved, um, yeah, I love that you were talking about that you had fears with the needles themselves, and if you
Mhm.
can expand on that if you'd like. But dating. You said you had a lot of fears of dating, and you did kind of allude to the fact that you were struggling a little bit before. Um, how did that play into your transition, and how was that worked out for you?
Do you want me to answer the needle thing first?
Yeah, yeah, if you'd like to.
Okay.
I was just throwing that out there
Yeah.
as a because that's what triggered my memory of the depth of what
Yeah.
we talked
Yeah.
about.
No,
But
it's. I was gonna say because like I'm pretty sure that most people do not like needles, and it's
hmm
kind of just one of those things when I realize like, okay, this is the like the safe, well, not maybe not the safest, this is the most effective and best way to get estrogen as a trans woman or trans feminine person, or potentially just non-binary, whatever.
hmm
um and so I had to kind of get taught by a nurse like how to do it, and then I started doing it myself. And like i I kind of like over time, I like I guess I sort of like lost track of like where I was supposed to do it, or like because I was always finding the spot while I was sitting down, and I started to realize that I was thinking that I was pointing to a certain part of my leg, but because of the way my leg had kind of like come to rest and how I was sitting, that
Uh-huh.
I was, and so I kind of had to like relearn, because if you put the needle in and it hurts, like that's a sign that you shouldn't have put it there. And that, but a lot of times, like, well, I don't want to have to do it again, so I'll just do it I'll just do the injection anyways. And one time I had like the leg that I injected into, like my foot was kind of feeling a little bit like kind of tingly and like slightly numb, and my leg, that leg felt like a different temperature than the rest of my body. It was this really weird thing, and I was like,
Ooh.
that doesn't seem like that should happen. And so I went to the emergency room, and they like kind of checked everything out, and it's like, no, because this was hours later, like, no, you're fine. And because of that experience, like I've kind of instituted like a bit of a rule or a practice that I try to do my injections before noon, because at least that way I give myself, 6 to 8 to 10 hours, to for anything. If anything's going to go
Mm-hmm.
wrong, I'll probably know it by then, because I don't want to go to sleep and not wake up. That's like, I'm a
Yeah.
hypochondriac, and I get overly paranoid about things I shouldn't.
Mm.
And this is, so every time I do my injection, I still worry, is this going to be the time that I screw it up and I like inject into a vein, or I hit a nerve, or different things like that. And it feels stupid because I've been doing it for over 2 years now and never had a serious problem, but my brain just, every time it's like, is this going to be the time? I still do it though, so I guess that means the fear's not completely holding me back. um so that's kind of that. The dating thing, like I kind of alluded to before, once I transitioned, like the first kind of year, I was just like, okay, I'm not even going anywhere near dating, because I'm not like reformed yet. Like I'm in flux, and I don't expect anyone to like kind of meet this like half transitioned me and be like, yes, I want to be with you. It just didn't seem like it could happen, or it was very unlikely. And so, but I like looking back, I just kind of realized like, like of course, if you're trying to like, be someone that's not the right fit for you, or that's not the right you, or whatever, it would make sense that like it would not go as well. And it would be, because again, I didn't realize that I was trying to live vicariously through women. And then because it was kind of this thought, like honestly, there was times where it was like, if I did manage to get a girlfriend and she was like the kind of like feminine that like I really kind of was drawn to, that I ultimately kind of became, then I was like, well, maybe that'll scratch that itch enough for me that I'll be okay. I'll be satisfied. I won't feel so like kind of frustrated and like deprived. And then when I like transition, I'm like, oh, now I can just do it. I can just be that now, and satisfy that feeling. And I still want to be with women, but it's like now I don't have to live vicariously through them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
um and yeah, there's just this fear, and it's a common thing talked about that I've seen, that dating is harder when you're trans, because a lot less people are willing to date trans people, and a lot more people are concerned about like the genitals, or
Mm-hmm.
just that kind of stuff. And I think it's getting a little bit better, a little bit by little bit, but it's still like, just I kind of realize, because I'm also gray asexual and like autistic, and like just a bunch of other categories that I kind of fall into, that I sort of, like I said this to my mom one time, I was just like, yeah, I'm just my like kind of dating pool is very, very small, and I'm aware of this, and I don't have a choice in the matter, so I just have to try to make the best of it.
Hmm. And then we'll follow that sort of more challenging one up with a big softball. How do you feel that transitioning has affected your mental health?
Yeah, like I know I was kind of saying in the pre-interview that I kind of look back on it and I don't feel like my entire time as a guy was terrible. Like I do have some happy memories and I did have some moments where I felt good, but since becoming and living as a woman, as like a feminine person, it's just like it's almost entirely good. It's like that's just not kind of hanging over my head anymore. That frustration's kind of gone. It's now it's more just a frustration of, the way that the world sees me or the way that the world reacts to me, but I feel like I'm in the right place
Mm-hmm.
now, and like it's yeah, so I think that's kind of, what I've heard other people say too is just, once you transition, it's just a lot of this like this frustration that you didn't realize the true source of it, and it just kind of lets all that air out of that balloon and you just can move forward and have less things distracting you.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And I just think that, when you can really let yourself go into finding your true self, it just makes everything better.
Mhm.
Are there ways in which you feel like your transition has lived up to your expectations, or any ways in which it's kind of fallen short of what you were hoping for?
Um, it's lived up to my expectations, I guess, that I've been able to like come to be a person that is happier with themselves and feels more true, and like I can look in the mirror and be like, wow, yeah, that's what I want to see, and I feel like kind of good and more fulfilled, kind of more selfishly and vainly. I feel like I kind of got shortchanged a little bit on the chest growth side of things, but um, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, that's the problem with, especially like, following a lot of girls on Instagram. We always like to talk about that here, about you can't control how your body reacts to hormones and things, and you can't set up expectations of trying to achieve a certain look or anything when you have no idea how it's going to go for you, how the hormones are going to affect you. And so it's just more about accepting yourself than kind of setting those goals, that are things that you honestly, there's no way that you can live up to it. What advice would you have what advice do you have from your journey to pass on to young or closeted trans people out there?
I think this was actually the one that I wrote down some stuff for because I also ask about uh, this on my show because I think it's a very valuable thing. And so I kind of have this concept on my show of like hype hats and heavy hats. And the idea being like hype hats are people that hype you up and encourage you and really try to like help you reach your best potential. And heavy hats are kind of the opposite. They're people that slow you down and make you doubt yourself and kind of knock you off course. And so I've come to recognize how valuable those hype hats are. Those people who will pump you up and cheer you on and want to see you succeed and be your best self, and people who get it and kind of get you. And I have the next episode that's coming out. I'll kind of spoil something that the guest said that if your friends or people around you seem like to react negatively when you say like you want to try something new or you want to do something a little different, then that's maybe a sign that they should be excited and they should be like wanting to see that from you, like growth and change. And community, obviously, like I said, is very important. Support groups were so crucial, and I know that some people live in like more remote or smaller towns and don't really have much locally, and so they have to find what they can find online. And
Yeah.
depending on what you kind of already know, what to like search for or what to think of, like it's all out there, but can you find it by chance? Can you find it by smarts? But just trying to find the community where you can make friends and find cheerleaders and be patient and be brave. That's what I wrote down.
Yeah, all very good points. Yeah, it's all about having, like you said, you having that core group of supporters, the people that you know are going to support you, because you're going through so many struggles on your own. You don't need more of those kind of people that are kind of slowing or weighing you down or making you question things when
Hmm.
you're just basically questioning everything already. And um, yeah, it's just the other thing that I do love to talk about: patience, patience in people accepting you, allowing them time to do that, and then patience with the hormones and the changes and finding yourself. And like you alluded to as well, we we're going through a puberty really fast, and cis women had their entire lives to learn these things slowly and subtly, and we're trying to do a crash course in it. So um, it's a good thing
Yeah.
to remember. Be
Something that you
patient.
just kind of made me think of that uh, I don't think about it too often, but like something that has occurred to me at various times throughout transition was just this idea that like as once you've transitioned your whole life you've gone into like one change room, you've been around one gender, quote unquote, and then suddenly now it's like, oh well, now if I went to a public pool with my family or my friend, well more so my family, like I'm not used to going into like change rooms with my mom and my sister, but now I would. And it hasn't happened yet, but like, it just occurred to me that that is like a change that would happen now, and it would be, that's kind of like weird because that's not the sort of thing that usually happens for cis people.
Hmm.
um, and just like to kind of reorient in my mind that like, yeah, now this is like okay, and now like it would be inappropriate to go into the change room with like boy cousins or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah,
So that's a random thought, but yeah.
it's sort of one of the learning curves. I think, the things that you suddenly remember, where you are, and things like that, of like, oh, I guess I can't really do that anymore. I guess it's sort of in a way inappropriate now for me to do these things. And then,
Yeah.
allowing yourself the permission to remember that now that you're on the other side, that certain things are allowed now. Um, so yeah, so we, like I said, we have a cis person in the chat, and they asked kind of a basic question about being trans. And it's not something that we particularly answer on this channel a lot, so I thought it would be worth it to bring it up, especially since someone is actually interested. And we always appreciate when people want to become educated and want to learn about it. So they ask, and I'm just assuming because Ryan is the beginning part of your username, that your name is Ryan. So I hope I can call you that, and if not, let me know in the chat. They ask, okay, so if you're transgender, you identify as the opposite gender, um, but do you still feel deep inside, um, basically, do you still feel a tie to your original gender? And I'll let you answer, and then I'll answer my own on that one.
So what that kind of made me think of was, the times when I don't do this all that often, but whenever I do end up looking back at, old pictures of me, and I've described this to different people as like it feels like I'm looking at pictures of a brother that I used to have, and
Mm-hmm.
not me, old me. And like, even my sisters kind of asked like, when I'm talking about you from when you were a kid, I still think of you as, dead name. And I still, because that's who you were then. And like, I know that this is different for different people. Some people like, no, I was always this, I was always this name, this pronoun. I am a little bit more kind of nebulous with that stuff. But I guess, yeah, I like, to me, my old self feels like this brother that I used to have who isn't around anymore. And that's kind of, I guess about as far as I really think about it anymore. I had those experiences, but I've been very much more focused on kind of the present and the future
Mm-hmm.
now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that's just there's so many thoughts. There's so many thoughts, but the first one I think is that you we mentioned earlier in the chat, and maybe Ryan wasn't quite in here yet at that point, but that you spend your whole life trying to be the gender that everybody's telling you are. You were never that gender, um, emotionally and mentally, it just always felt wrong. And so it's that what transitioning is coming to that realization of what the problem has been your whole life, and finally allowing yourself to express that and live as that. And so it's not, I mean, you can look back at photos and see, your past self, like you said, and other people still will dead name you and, call you the name you were before, and the previous pronouns. But the thing to keep in mind is that this was always our state. It was hard, and it was a struggle to try and present the way that people thought we should, or was um, congruent with the gender we were assigned at birth. But it was never right. So to look back, you're still seeing you still see the same you, but you see somebody who was struggling emotionally, had a really hard time figuring out why things didn't fit, why you didn't feel like the other people that were, just seemed to. I just never understood guys. I never understood the way they thought and all that. And I'm just like, what is wrong with me that I don't understand life the way they see it? And then come to find out later what's going on. And then as you take hormones and start to present the way that you feel is right, then it's just like the lights turn on. All of a sudden everything makes sense, and you can see the world, and it just makes sense to you finally. So it's not a matter of like feeling that old self behind. It's just more of a self that was struggling and trying to find itself. And
Hmm.
um so I hope that's a better articulation, or I hope that's a good articulation of that thought. If you want,
I do.
you can
Oh,
always whisper, DM me, Ryan, and I can try and go into it a little bit deeper if we need to.
I was just gonna say, like, it's really fascinating to me. It's almost like the nature versus nurture argument because, like, I obviously understand at this point that gender norms are like imposed upon us, and it's kind of this idea of how, most people just don't question it. They go along with it, and it seems to be fine for them.
Yeah.
I mean, you still have like tomboy girls, and maybe there'll be some more effeminate guys, but for the most part, people just kind of go with it, and it's fascinating to me to think that for some people it's just so clear that like no, that's not what I'm supposed to be, and when you like just putting on a certain piece of clothes, because clothing is like coded and different things are coded, and just to know and to be able to recognize that you put on a certain piece of clothing, or getting called she instead of he, or different things, and it feels different, and you can kind of tell that that's right for you. And I think that that's really interesting, and it's really unfortunate that so many people don't like that you can kind of just be like, no, this is what feels right for me. And I kind of talked in the episode of my show that's coming out next week. We also talked about the kind of connection between neurodivergence and gender divergence, and that's an interesting topic as well.
Hmm. Well, and it's kind of funny because it's it's tough when people start to talk about religion. Not saying that that's happening in the chat right now, but I'm just saying that like a lot of religious people like to say that you know for some reason, you know thanks to one translation of the Bible, that it for some reason says that being transgender is wrong, or some things. um but there's they like to talk out of both sides of their mouth, because it's just a shell. Who you are is the soul inside, and
Hmm.
the outside is the shell, and it's temporary, and then you'll move on to God. And yet they don't understand that with in terms of being transgender. And that's essentially I think the simplest way to describe it is there's who we are, and then there's the shell on the outside. And most times, for most people, the shell and the inside are the same, and sometimes it's not. And so, like I said, because of your outside presentation, people assign a certain way of being to you, and behaviors and all of that sort of stuff, and a set of constraints. And you go through your life and you're like, okay, you buy into that and you try. and then it just never works until you realize that no, it's just I was just put in the wrong shell. And unfortunately, we're not hermit crabs. We can't just, slide out of that one and into another one. But